If you're looking for how to move with conviction and to set standards, then this is for you. This is Ken, and here on Life Moves with Ken, I talk about the steady moves that keep us progressing without burning ourselves out or without pretending that we have to be perfect. And so today we're talking about that point where we are like, I'm done. I'm no longer debating with myself. I've got to get beyond that. And you've been there because you've had the conversation that sounds something like this. Should I get up right now? Nah, let me just go ahead and hit that snooze button. Should I start today? Nah, tomorrow will be fine. Should I skip this or that today? Nah, it's just one day. And you know what? That back and forth drives you crazy. It drives me crazy. And it's its own kind of stress and its own kind of weight. And after repeating that, something inside each of us starts to change. It's the changing of expectation that we have ourselves. It's the moving of the line that we'll never be able to reach our goals. And then we even start telling ourselves stuff like, you never could have reached it in the first place. And so what happens is we start to change by lowering the floor because we're no longer reaching for the ceiling. And then we actually, many of us will throw in the towel. But today, we're talking about what it means to stop negotiating with yourself and finally set a standard that holds. And there's something powerful about drawing the line in the sand. And today, we're going to learn how to say, this is my line, this is my standard. So, like I said, most of us think our struggle is discipline, but more often than not, the real struggle is internal bargaining. That's what I was talking about before that conversation that we have, where we open every day with a conversation that already should have been done. And we're sitting there renegotiating commitments we already made. And so, what we're doing is treating our standards as if they are kind of these flexible suggestions instead of decisions that have already been made. And what makes this so exhausting is not the action itself. It's that mental friction of constantly reconsidering who we're going to be from day to day. And every time we say we're going to do something and then quietly lower the expectation, there is something that subtly is happening inside of us. We are weakening our internal authority. We begin to trust ourselves less. And it's not because we're incapable. So please know, this has nothing to do with can we do it? It's not because we're lazy. It has nothing to do if we have the discipline of doing it, because the issue is that our word keeps changing. So we set the line, then we change the line. We set the plan, we change the plan. We set the standard, we change the standard. And so what's really happening is that we can't rely on ourselves even in small things. And so it becomes really difficult to build anything that's sustainable and anything that's steady. So here's what you need to know. A standard changes the dynamic completely. A standard says this has already been decided. It eliminates unnecessary emotional energy. It gives us something firm to stand on when our motivation disappears. And so that's why the line matters. It's not about being rigid. So we're not talking about inflexibility. We're talking about stability that has a floor that we won't go under. And so what I want to talk about is how we actually do this in a way that strengthens us instead of overwhelms us. Okay. So here's the first thing. Setting a standard doesn't mean adding 10 new rules to our lives. And so if you're thinking that, oh man, this is just some other amount of stuff that I've got to add, that's not what we're doing, because we learned in previous videos that if we try to overhaul everything at once, what we're doing is creating another cycle of intensity. What generally happens is it ends up in some level of collapse and failure. So what we're talking about is raising a standard by defining our minimum. So let me say it again. We are raising a standard by defining our minimum. And our minimum is a question that we ask ourselves. And we have to be honest with ourselves when we're talking about our minimum. And so the minimum, the way we figure it out is by asking the following question. What is the lowest acceptable version of this habit that I'll accept? So where is my floor? The answer that we give to that question, that's the bottom line. For some of us, what that might look like is training 3 days a week, no matter what. 3, that's the number, it's settled. And so like for me, each week when I work out, the floor for me is when I start my workout and I start walking, then the walk is going to at least be 2 miles a day. No matter when I put the shoes on, no matter when I go out, no matter how much I end up walking, the minimum is always 2 miles. And so by the time I get done, I know that I will have walked at least to my 1 mile marker, turn right around and come back home. And so if I add in weight training or a second walk, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But the floor is 2 miles. And I complete that walk usually about 4 times a week. So I try to make sure that no matter what's going on, I find time for it to be 4 times a week, 2 miles every time I hit the road. And so if I'm talking about how I'm eating, I have a very simple commitment. Never have 2 bad meals in a row. And so that means I cannot eat Shake Shack 2 days in a row, 2 meals in a row. That means I am absolutely not going to Steak and Shake. For those of y'all who know what Steak and Shake is, I can't do that 2 meals in a row. And so for some of you, it might mean 10 quiet minutes every morning before you touch your phone. That's your standard. For some of us, it may be, you know what? Let me think before I speak. That's your standard. The specifics aren't the issue. So that's not where you need to focus. The point is that once the line is drawn, you don't reopen the conversation. 2 miles, that's it. Once you decide, you make that your floor and you move on and you live with that decision. And the issue is that you set the standard that's sustainable. So my standard for walking cannot be 5 miles a day. I know that I can't do that walk because I just don't have the time. I don't have the energy for it. And so I chose something that's sustainable and something that I can do. So we're not talking fantasy, okay? So that's not it. We know that if we create something that's unrealistic, it won't hold up under pressure. And so the power of a standard is not how impressive it looks. We're not trying to impress people. The power is that it survives when the hard times come. So a real standard, it can withstand fatigue. A real standard can withstand stress. A real standard can withstand inconvenience. And if your standard can't survive those things, it's not a floor. It's a fantasy and it's a performance. And we know that performance eventually collapses. So we're not doing performance, okay? We need to set the standard, something that's realistic, something that we can do that is not outside of our ability. And when we do it, our minds will test it and we'll hear all these kind of excuses. Oh yeah, you set the standard, your mind is going to tell you, oh no, lower it just one time. It's no big deal if you fall off the horse. No, you have to tell yourself, no, in isolation, it may not be a big deal, but standards aren't built on isolation. Standards are built on repetition. And so every time we hold the line, when it would be easier not to, we're reinforcing something on the inside of ourselves. We are strengthening our self-trust. We are strengthening our life move accountability. We're saying, I am moving in this way, and I'm somebody who can count on myself. So over time, when we make these changes, we get to see ourselves in a different light, and we stop describing ourselves as someone who's trying, and we stop labeling ourselves as inconsistent. So what happens is we begin to see ourselves as steady, and we begin to see ourselves as powerful, and we begin to have a clear floor that doesn't collapse after one day. And so we don't spiral because we slipped once. What we do is we return to our standard. So when we have the floor, and because we've been consistent, what happens is we raise the floor. And so our lowest moments are no longer destructive. They're contained. So when we kind of slip up, we don't fall as far. We recover faster, and we start to begin building an identity that changes. And it's not because we were overly intense. It's because we were consistent at our ground floor level. And I hope that makes sense, because understanding the floor is really what we're all about here. We're understanding how to set standards for our lives, and we're understanding how to make a difference every single day. So we're building a new who we are. We don't announce it. We don't perform it. We simply live from it. This is the line because we're done negotiating the basics. So when we stop negotiating with ourselves, we stop leaking energy. When we stop leaking energy, we start building momentum. When we start building momentum from a steady floor, our lives begin to feel stable instead of fragile. And so that's what this is all about. The challenge that I'm going to have for you this week, I'm going to ask you to take out a piece of paper, and I'm going to ask you to say to yourself, okay, in this area that I'm trying to make changes or I'm trying to make moves, what is my minimum move that I'm going to make? Write it down, and every single time you have a moment where you're trying to renegotiate yourself, pull that paper out and remind yourself, no, my minimum, my non-negotiable is this floor. And because you decided to set a floor, you'll come to realize that you actually are able to be the man who's moving in the way that you've decided you want to move. You don't have to be that person who sets plans and breaks that plan. No, you're moving in the right direction. You are a man on the move. You are a person of standard. And so you're setting the standard for yourself by determining what your floor is. If this resonated with you, please subscribe. We're not chasing hype here. We're building something that's solid. And as I say all the time, I love you. And don't think that you're starting over. That's not what's happening. You're just starting from here. This is Ken with Life Moves with Ken. I'll see you next time. Take it easy. Bye.